It's Todd's Odds with our sports betting analyst, Todd Fuhrman, and it's brought to you by FanDuel. Todd correctly predicted that the Florida Panthers would win the Stanley Cup. Todd, you want to have a bit of a moment here? Give you the stage?
You know what, Jay? You can't really gloat when you pick the team to win the Stanley Cup, since I failed so miserably, even when I had two teams to choose from for the Lombardi Trophy to win the Super Bowl. But it's always nice to be able to land a nice futures ticket. But we're already back on the grind with the draft, free agency. It's a question of who we build our portfolio around for the 2024-2025 season instead.
And let's not forget Copa America. Todd, I'm worried about your Americans after a loss to Panama on Thursday, but I'm feeling better about your Canadians after that win over Peru on Tuesday, because now the Canadians are a minus 140 favorite to beat Chile on Saturday and move on from Group A. Do you like Canada's chances ahead of that matchup with Chile?
You know, absolutely brutal earlier tonight, Jay, to see Team USA go down with 10 men against Panama. But I guess the silver lining, beat Uruguay and potentially get into the knockout phase of the tournament, or lose to Uruguay and maybe have a new bench boss headed into the 2026 World Cup. But you mentioned Canada and how they've played, finally breaking through with the first goal as a side under Jesse Marsch's leadership. Now, granted, it came against the 10-man Peruvian side that was down a player with a red card. And so I do have questions about the Canadians' ability to break down the Chilean defense. But the luxury they're afforded in this spot, you highlighted, any old result will get them through. So I think if the longer this game stays 0-0, the Canadians just have to be patient, hope the Chileans press, and maybe Canada has a chance to break through with a late tally. But from a betting perspective, odds makers have done a tremendous job. So essentially, you're getting Canada on the draw line here to try and get through, and I'll have no investment on the match.
Okay, let's talk about Euro 2024. The round of 16 is now set, and England, just as they were at the beginning of the tournament, they're still the favorite, Todd. You said before the tournament, England had questions they needed to answer. Todd Fuhrman, did England answer any of those questions?
You know, honestly, Jay, I think England has more questions after the group stage than they did coming into the tournament. But in typical English fashion, they have been dealt one of the more favorable hands in terms of the draw that they have in front of them to try and get them into the final. So despite a lackluster offensive attack, their odds have shortened when you consider that a lot of the European heavyweights are all on the other side of the draw when you're talking about Spain, Portugal, France, Belgium, Germany. So if England can't get through to the final here, I think there'll be plenty of folks out with their pitchforks trying to run Gareth Southgate out as tops of the federation there. But I think the English side, with what we've seen from them defensively, they're compact enough. They are built for a deep run. But I'm not running to bet them at such a short price right now like our friends at FanDuel are offering.
Let's talk about Portugal. I know you were a big believer in Portugal going into this tournament. They did make it through to the round of 16. Are you still a believer in Cristiano Ronaldo, Bruno Fernandes, and company?
You know, I'll throw out the result, the 2-0 defeat in the final game of the group stage against Georgia. There were 8 changes made to that lineup, so you can understand why the Portuguese lack some continuity. But my bigger concern is Roberto Martinez staying married to the idea that Cristiano Ronaldo is in the peak of his career. We haven't seen a lot of activity from him in the final third. The movement isn't what you'd expect on the international stage. And if he's going to go out there and they're going to expect to get 75 to 80 minutes from him every knockout stage match, I think it limits some of the upside for this Portuguese side. So I was bullish on them coming into the tournament, but my expectations have been tempered, although I do think the depth can work in their favor. But such a tremendous draw that they're going to have to go through, you'll be better served to bet Portugal on an individual match-by-match basis than you will to try and come back in over the top and maybe add to that potential futures position.
All right, Todd, now it's time for my favorite prop bets. NHL free agency's coming. We've got some fun NHL prop bets to ask you about. We're going to begin with the Tampa Bay Lightning. It appears they are still the overwhelming favorite to retain Steven Stamkos. But do you maybe see, Todd Fuhrman, do you maybe see another option on this board?
You know, when you look at those prices, Jay, we can understand why Tampa is an overwhelming favorite. You figure that 91 is going to want to finish his career with the organization where he's won multiple cups. But the one team on that list that I do think offers some interesting potential value, if you're looking to put up a little bit to make a lot, would be the Detroit Red Wings. When we talk about culture, the level of familiarity, knowing that Steve Yzerman was in charge down there in Tampa, I'm sure Stevie Y and Stevie Stamkos have had a little bit of a discussion about the potential impact he could have We saw some of the veterans that the Red Wings brought in last year to try and bolster their chances, and maybe an additional goal scorer gets them across the finish line. The problem with the Red Wings is I don't think they're a legitimate cup contender, and that's the hole I can poke through in a lot of the sales pitches Steven Stamkos will get from all the teams that were listed there, not named the Tampa Bay Lightning.
There have been reports that the Toronto Maple Leafs will extend Joseph Woll over the next week or so, and Brad Treliving said on Wednesday that he does not see a goalie on the Leafs' current roster to pair with him. So as we look at the goalie market here, Todd, which UFA goalie do you think the Leafs will sign? And do you see a goalie here that you might sprinkle a little cheddar on, Todd Fuhrman?
You know, two of those guys seem interesting to me, and we can start with the second favorite in Laurent Brossoit. He's a netminder that I'm all too familiar with from the time that he spent out here in Vegas. And the crazy thing about it is he wasn't on the parent club the entire time. He spent a lot of time honing his craft down there in Henderson and handled his business like a consummate veteran. We've seen what Brossoit has meant to the Winnipeg Jets, backing up Connor Hellebuck on multiple stints. And I think he could provide the perfect veteran presence if Brad Treliving sets that expectation that Joseph Woll is going to be our guy, but if for whatever reason he falters, we can lean on you and maybe create a little bit more of a 55-45 or 60-40 time split. The other goalie that I think is interesting there is Anthony Stolarz. He was outstanding this season for Florida. The one question that I think you have to be honest and ask Anthony Stolarz if you're in the Leafs front office, do you want to be a starting goalie? You want that mentality, but at the same time, he has to understand the role and the fact that the Leafs may be committing to Joseph Woll as their netminder of the future.
We are committing to Todd Fuhrman as our sports betting expert for not just the present, but the future as well, because he's great. Todd, great T-shirt. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the draft. We'll talk to you next week.
Always a pleasure, Jay.
When we return, the Onrights and Wrongs, Canada's most popular sports television segment.